the demands of the modern social media landscape in terms of you need to have this many shots, this many reels, this many posts, and this many stories. All these blinking hoops you have to jump through to just release a song. You go play these college festivals and they'd have the worst, sound setup. And the blankets we were given had little cuts in them. And some of them even had technically old blood stains. Even after I got this threatening call, I continued doing what I was doing. But it was scary enough that I stopped using names overtly. But it was very clear who I was talking. And Chakravyuh at that point was a very inspirational kind of band for us. Not many pre-streaming folks show up at gigs because they're at that stage when they don't want to go out to gig. Mumbai is great. It's a fantastic place to work, but the survival imperative is so strong that if your artistic creative work isn't delivering bare minimum to pay your rent and get you around, you can't sustain yourself there. Maybe some of that has a role to play in the kind of bands that come out of a certain city or a certain area.
Namaste and welcome to Music Mehfil India. For those of you who are new here, Music Mehfil India is about the Indian music verse, covering the people, their projects and their organizations in the Indian music scene and industry. Today is a conversation I've really been looking forward to. We are speaking to the frontman of Thermal and a Quarter, who are known for their eclectic blend of genres and really witty lyrics. The writer of those witty lyrics is their frontman, none other than Bruce Lee Money, who is with us here today. Bruce, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Saturday is a very busy day for me. Usually I have a bunch of classes and things that I do on Saturdays. So yeah, it's nice to take a little diversion from that and do this. So thank you for having me.
Okay, so as of 2024, how many years has it been?
So it's 1996. So as musicians, we are awful at mathematics. So what is that? That's almost 28 years, right? So 28 years. This October, it'll be 28 years.
Wow. Okay. And was that always the plan to,
There was no plan. There was absolutely no plan. We started this band when we were young, irresponsible teenagers in Christ College, Bangalore. And we had absolutely no plan for any kind of world domination or Grammy winning or any of that nonsense. It was just, hey, this is cool. We have some instruments that we kind of learned to play by ourselves. We seem to get along as people. And we also had something interesting in terms of writing our own music from the very beginning. We were one of the few bands in the college scene at that time that wrote our own music, and all that just kept going, and that is about it. It's just been gig to gig, song to song, album to album, tour to tour. That's it. There was really no master plan of any kind. So it's by pure accident and perseverance or whatever else you want to call it. Good luck, fortune, that we find ourselves here today, 28 years down, still in the same band, still writing music, still touring, still doing that thing.
Wow. Okay. What was going on in the Bangalore scene when you began?
Back in the late 90s in the Bangalore scene, there were no venues to play at. The only places that bands could really play was college festivals. And there were plenty of those. There was all the engineering colleges and medical colleges would have their annual kind of festivals, and they'd have competitions as part of those festivals. And typically every festival would conclude with a big kind of rock show where they'd invite a headlining band to come and play. And those were pretty much the only times we got out and watched concerts, because there really wasn't a concert scene back then. Every few years, there'd be a big international band that came down. I think in the mid-90s, 95, 96, Jethro Tull came down to Bangalore. Again, Bangalore was at that point, again, people have called it the rock capital of the country many times across its checkered history. But at that point, yeah, I think Jethro Tull had come, and 2001, of course, Deep Purple came and we opened for them and so on. Yeah, so back then, the bands that we watched and inspired us were in the local scene were bands like Millennium, which is a homegrown Bangalore heavy metal band. And in the late 90s, another band that really had a huge impact and made a huge impression on us was a band from Bombay called Chakraview.
Oh, yeah.
And some of these bands we heard thanks to the Rock Streak Journal's kind of production. They would release a little album at the end of the year on audio cassette, of course, which is called The Great Indian Rock, which featured
Yes.
bands from around the country. Mostly at that point, not many bands from the South, but mostly bands from Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, and so on. And that was our kind of window into the indie scene at that point. And we heard of bands like Parikrama, of course, Chakraview, Olio and the Rock Opera. Stone Cold was a band from Bangalore at that point. But
Wow.
so and Chakraview at that point was a very inspirational kind of band for us because they were doing really adventurous, very different music. And we got the opportunity to watch them live when we played at a festival in Chennai at the Madras Christian College. They headlined that festival. And we were actually in the audience just before we became Thermal and a Quarter. And I think that gig had made a big impression on all of us, the founder members. We were all there at that gig. And we still talk about it, saying that was a gig that really kind of inspired us.
So, how did venues and more frequent live gigs start happening in Bangalore scene?
I think from 96, it was more than 10, 15 years before, venues and stuff started becoming a thing where you had a place to
Yeah.
play, a bar that would host bands on a regular basis and have a calendar of events and so on. I think it was definitely more than 10. I think it was only in the early 2010s where you really started seeing that picking up steam. And between 2010 and 2020, I think there were a few really, really good years where every week you'd have 5 or 6 gigs that you could catch. But before that, it was few and far between still. There were the big, I think between 2000 2010, a lot of big international acts came and played in Bangalore. There was Deep Purple, of course. There was Jethro Tull, both of which we opened for. There was Metallica and Megadeth. There was Mark Knopfler. There was Sting. There was the Rolling Stones. And all of them came to Bangalore. And that obviously kept a lot of the local rock fans happy in terms of having these, large scale events being organized and just a chance to see the musicians that we grew up admiring live on stage.
Awesome. Tell me something. Thermal and a Quarter, more or less, has a stable lineup all these years. Why do you think that is? How has that come about?
I'll just say, when you said stable, the first thing I thought of was horses. And, we did a tour in Ireland some time ago. And in Ireland, everyone calls everyone else Horse because according to them, it's the easiest way to remember anyone's name. Just call them Horse. So, yeah. But anyway, sorry to digress. But stability in the lineup, I don't know. I think a large proportion of that can be credited to just pure dumb luck. Bands have several inflection points in their careers. And if a band starts in college, then there's an inflection point when the members graduate from college, and then they choose, are they going to stay in the same city? Are they going somewhere else for graduation? Are they leaving the country? Are they leaving town? And then post that, after a couple of years of that, then there's the whole family thing. Is someone getting married? Is someone having babies? All that kind of stuff. And so there are these several points across a band's career where, things can go sideways in terms of someone saying, hey, this isn't working for me anymore. And for us, I think definitely the first inflection point was in somewhere around the year 2000 when our founder bass player moved to London. He went there for higher studies. And so we did, lose a band member at that point, founder member. But we were lucky in finding someone else. Sunil Chandy was a founder member at that point, left to study in London. And Rudy David joined us almost immediately. It was, I think, less than a week that elapsed before we had a new bass player. Which again, dumb luck. He happened to be around in town and he heard we were looking for a bass player. He showed up for a jam and we just got along. And the first jam was just, wow, this is great. I mean, it feels like we've got a new relationship already. And he stayed in the band for 10 years, which again is lucky that he was around all that time. We continue to, we still get along, we're still friends and stuff. But around 2010, again, different priorities. He again was, kind of different life stage than we are. He was 10 years older than the rest of us. And so at 2010, it kind of stopped working for him. And for a brief while, we had another bass player called Prakash Kian, who was pretty active in the session-based circuit in Bangalore at that point. After which we've had Leslie, and Leslie's been around from 2012 to now. So technically the longest serving bass player in the band. So Rajiv and I, of course, have been the kind of diehards hanging in there from 1996. So yeah, we are the original horses, if you were. And the Leslie has been with us now for 12 years. Tony has been actually with us from 2005. So that's a long time. But he took a kind of break in between. He was busy with other projects. For a few years, he wasn't with us, but technically from 2005. So yeah, a fairly decent stability, if you want to call it that. Yeah, good.
How many of the members are like full-time musicians? Because if I understand correctly, all of you have always had a job to support financially.
Not really. I mean, for Rajiv and myself, we've been full-time musicians from 2010, where everything we do is connected to either we teach music or we play music. That's it. We don't have other jobs in terms of non-musical things. Yeah, we run a school, but it's technically a musician's job. That's what we do. So from 2010, Rajiv and I have been full-time musicians. So it's 14 years right now that we've been full-time musicians. Before that, we had all kinds of jobs. Rajiv was very gainfully employed in the information technology sector, which is a very gainful kind of employment you can get in Bangalore. Yeah, he was there 10 years. He worked for really big companies, Intel, ST Micro, GI Systems, things like that. So he had, a career that was kind of taking off just around 2010. And then, of course, he did the extremely smart thing of dumping that amazingly upwardly mobile career and saying, no, I want to play the drums. So yeah, those are the things that we do for love. For me, I've had quite a checkered trajectory across those 10 years. I started working in I think it was a .com back then. It was a .com boom in 2000, a company called indya.com, India.com. It was a portal. And back in 2000, portals were supposed to be, it was as cool as AI back then. Like how AI is now, portals were the AI back then. So all of which, of course, imploded in less than a couple of years. But that was my first job. My second job was teaching English in Christ College. I taught English and literature to, like what they call it PUC back then, pre-university, 11th and 12th grade and first year degree. I taught English for a while. And then I got into writing content and doing marketing for a bunch of, again, IT sector companies. And we did all that for 10 years, from 2000 to 2010, while, of course, the band was still going. We were still writing. We put out how many albums? 1, 2, 3, 4 albums in those 10 years, if you count 2000 as one of the years. We put out thermalquarter.com, album number 1, Jupiter Cafe, album number 2, Plan B, album number 3, and This Is It, album number 4. So we put out 4 albums between 2000 and 2010. We toured. We did our first international tour across the UK and Scotland. We did all kinds of gigs around the country while still having full-time jobs. So tough life.
But you loved it.
Absolutely. And I talk about this all the time. People say, oh, it must have been horrible. You had these soul-destroying jobs and you had to get back and face horrible bosses. And we didn't see it that way. At least there probably were instances where sometimes those kind of feelings crept in. But hindsight always being 2020, I think they were very useful years for us because the music that the band made could stay completely, unfettered, completely pure, completely uncontrolled by any commercial imperative, right? We didn't have to compromise anything about the music that we did to pay the bills because the bills were being paid by the work that we did. And I think that put us in a very interesting position artistically. We were free to do anything. We could experiment with any style, experiment with any confusion of genres and instruments or whatever. And I think we did, which was great.
Because there is no financial pressure on the music to make money for you to pay the bills, you're still striking a chord. You're still resonating heavily with your audience for years now. So how have you managed to balance that artistic vision with, relatability to your audience? Because a lot of those themes are brand new, not tried and tested before.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's easy to say, artists want to work for art's sake, and the true deep dream of every artist is to have complete independence and freedom to do whatever they want and so on. But I think at heart, all of us human beings are, most of us human beings are craving attention, craving appreciation, craving confirmation, craving acceptance more than anything else. And as artists, I don't think we're any different, right? So even though we do like to have a sense of freedom about what we do with our art, at the end of the day, we're not sitting in our bedrooms and playing for ourselves. We're playing to people. And so we're constantly responding to, the vibe at gigs. We know when we're playing a song and no one is kind of getting it. And we know when we're playing a song and everyone is just going mad, like, wow, this is great, and that energy, all the chemicals that flow in you when those kind of things are happening, obviously encourage you to do more on those fronts, which is trying to get to that point when anything you play on stage is received well by the people who are listening to it. The freedom and the kind of adventurousness that comes with not having something really telling you what to do is it shows up when you sometimes take an artistic left or right turn away from things that are working just because you feel like it, right? And you are a bit afraid, but you're not afraid enough not to do it, right? So there have been several times when we've played a very different kind of song. We have many songs that are very unconventional. They don't really fit into a particular style or genre, and they don't fit into even typical song structures and so on. I mean, it's nothing new to us. It's just that we've been doing this for a while, and sometimes those songs really work because of their novelty, I suppose. Sometimes they don't work at all, but we continue to play them because we like them. So yeah, it's a mix of all of these things. It's not really a very black and white thing. And I think as a person, I'm also very much into this whole balance situation. And you got to find that balance. You got to find the balance between allowing yourself the freedom and the courage to kind of really explore new things with your instrument, with your art, with your songwriting, with your composition, arrangement, production, all of that. At the same time, be conscious and be cognizant of what your audience seems to like about what you're playing, right? And if you find that balance well, then I think it's one of the ingredients that makes for a long career.
Okay, so over your 28-year career, how have you seen the industry evolve? According to you, what have been certain milestones?
I think between 96 and 2010, apart from seeing all these international bands and the event companies really figuring out how to put together an event of that scale and organize it well, I think that definitely did get better across those 10 years. I think for local musicians, things really didn't start getting better till the latter half of the first decade, right? When there were more venues opening up and there were just enough bands and enough musicians to really have a say, in the sense of people saying, hey, you can't treat us badly, or you can't pay us late, or you can't put a gig together and not have even the basic things set up, which is all very common back in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, you go play these college festivals and they'd have the worst sound setups. They'd have we once played in some medical college and they put us up in one of the hostels to stay, and the blankets we were given had little cuts in them, and some of them even had technically old blood stains, and so that's what we were given. That's where we stayed. So this was quite common in the late 90s and stuff. If you were a traveling band and you got put up in some hostel, you got crap. I mean, you had to deal with all that. But I think a lot of that definitely has gotten better. It did get better towards the latter half of the first decade of the 21st century. And between 2010 and 2020, I think it got a lot better, because a lot of things, right? It's not just one thing that's changing. The last 30 years, the way technology has transformed all of our lives and how much more connected we are and how music is now consumed and distributed. If you think about it, we are a band that predates the internet almost. I mean, not the internet, but at least predates music distribution, streaming, all of that stuff, right? So, coming from that to where we are right now, I think it's not just one thing that's changed. There's so many things that have changed, and all of that together is what has created this current kind of ecosystem where we are. But there are a lot of bands, a lot of great bands playing, a lot of people coming out to watch gigs, a lot more openness to original and interesting music in the country. And and from the other side, from the industry side, in terms of indie and in terms of putting together, events and festivals, I think again, those folks also have traveled now. They've gone abroad. They've worked with international people. They've worked with larger systems, and therefore figured out how to do these things. Right? We played this amazing festival last year in Bangalore, the Bandland Festival, and it was comparable to any festival anywhere in the world. It was so well put together. Great, great setups, great tech. Superb audience, very well sold. Overall, just great. A really well done festival, and we've been part of a few like that across the last few years. So, yeah, I think it's the standard thing. Generally, life for everyone is getting better, but everything still feels like something is really wrong. That's just because there's this thing I've been reading about called the blue dot effect. Anyway, we won't get into that. But essentially, things have been getting better all around. It's that's how generally things are right now. Things just generally tend to get better.
Okay, so can you speak a little more about the social and political themes in your music?
Yeah, sure. I think some of this comes from, again, having that freedom and the lack of control from any outside source to just say what you feel and mean what you say. Throughout, we've tried to stay relevant to things that are going on around us. If you listen to our albums from 2000 to 2020 and our singles after that, they're pretty much a chronicle of our times, right? The album that came out in 2000 was called terminalandaquarter.com because that was the biggest thing back then, right? And to let you know a little secret, we are recording a single in the next the first week of July, and it's a song about AI because
AI.
Yeah, it's a song about AI, and it's a song called "Chat with Me." This is the first time I've told anyone about this, so consider yourself privileged. But
yes,
but it's a song called "Chat with Me," and it's exploring this whole thing about where are we going here? What are we doing about this? And how do we feel as humans about what the things that are happening? So I think throughout we've tried to stay true to what's going on around us. And if you look through our lyrics and the songs that we've written across the last 28 years, they pretty much are a chronicle of those times, what was happening around us, what we felt about what was happening around us, what was happening in our own lives, our families, the births of our children, our, travels that we had, experiences that we had, and all of that is pretty much what we write about. So, and in that milieu, if something socially or politically, happens and we feel strongly about that, we write about it. That's it.
Have you ever gotten in hot water because of this?
We've been variously lampooned and ridiculed and criticized. In 2009 was the first kind of overt, large-scale thing that we did. We did this tour called the Shut Up and Vote tour. We went through 5 cities. We were partnered with this NGO called Janagraha. It was basically an activity to try and get more young people to participate in the political process. Just go out and vote, right? And we asked a rock band to kind of, enable that. So we had to, we're a rock band, damn it. So we're not going to say, please vote. We're going to say, shut up and vote, So we got a lot of flack for that, saying, who are you to tell us to shut up and vote? It's supposed to be a participative democracy. And, yeah, you're going to hear this. Haters are going to hate and whatever. But it was great for us to do that at that time. And in 2020, we put out this thing called A World Gone Mad. In between, there was this whole album that we wrote about the Indian indie scene. It was called The Scene. And, there are songs in there called The Sponsors Backed Out. And, which is all the stuff that we've had across, all these years of playing. These things we've heard from festival organizers and colleges saying, everything's booked. Book your flights, just pay for it. And sorry, sponsors backed out, that kind of stuff. So it's personally, I did get into some hot water again in 2021 when I was doing this, in the height of COVID, I was doing this song a day thing, and I was making some songs that was openly critical about, the government at that point. And I got a threatening call, and it was pretty scary because, when someone leads with, you got a wife and kids, right? It's pretty freaking scary. Yeah. So,
As a songwriter, did you ever observe yourself, self-censoring sometimes?
It's again a matter of degree. When you've written songs for as long as I have, I've got we've released hundreds of songs, and I've got several hundred more that are kind of flying around on incomplete small bits and pieces of things and so on. And as you kind of get into the craft of doing that, this idea of you say self-censorship. I mean, that's kind of a pretty extreme term, but essentially it's editing, right? You're looking at something you're writing and you're editing it. And sometimes the edits are more from an aesthetic and artistic standpoint. Have I edited things because they they could be, politically charged, or they could be in some way offensive to some community or some party or some whatever? Not so much, but definitely editing for aesthetics, editing for things has definitely happened.
So, no, that's fair. I was meaning it more from a political point of view, where you do get threatening calls, or you see people, get divided into groups. The group that agrees with you and the group that doesn't agree with you, which is usually tends to be a bigger, more menacing group. And so you think like, okay, maybe I want to steer clear of this topic. Or I don't want to go there. I'm just going to stick with this. That kind of self-censoring.
I don't think we've done too much of that. We've pretty much said what we feel, and if we get flack for it, we get flack for it. That's all right. I mean, I think the freedom we enjoyed for those 10 years is hard to wear off, and so we just keep doing what we want to do. Even after I got this threatening call, I continued doing what I was doing. But it was scary enough that I stopped using names overtly, but it was very clear who I was talking about. It was very clear what I was saying and so on. But yeah, it did, in that sense, yes, I did self-censor to a point where I was not using names as explicitly as I was before that. But yeah, when someone leads with "you got a wife and kids," there's little else you can do about that.
Yeah. But brilliant. Kudos to you.
Thank you very much.
Going. So, okay, let's talk about touring in India. So it's rewarding and it's challenging. What have been some of the memorable instances for you?
Wow. I mean, memorable. It's talking about 28 years. Do you want me to talk for the next 1 hour?
Yes.
No. I mean, all kinds of things. And the first time we played outside Bangalore was probably, I think it was in 1998, 97. We played at the Great Indian Rock in Delhi. And it was the first outstation gig, as we used to call it back then. And it took like some god-awful time to get there. We went by train, and you know how it is. So, and then it was strange that the very first flight that we took on a tour was to the UK. Before that, no organizer outside Bangalore would consent to booking us flight tickets. I mean, flights were expensive back then and so on. But we just weren't a big enough band at that point to fly, and flying was this badge of honor, saying, yeah, now that you're being flown, you've made it, So yeah, it was one of those things. The Sharp and Vote tour is definitely one of the most memorable tours we've done around this country, because it was again connected to something that we felt pretty strongly about. And it was great to, do those gigs in Bangalore, in Calcutta, in Delhi, in Chennai, and Bombay, and to see what people thought of them. And it was a pretty interesting song that we wrote about it as well. So that was a cool tour. We've done, I think, touring wise, a serious tour we've not done as much as we've done internationally. We've done much bigger and longer tours abroad than we've done in India. And I guess the most memorable of that is now, almost 10 years, more than 10 years ago at the Edinburgh Fringe. We played, like 40 gigs across 60 days in three countries, four countries, whatever.
Wow.
So it was a lot of shows, and it was great. Transformative experience.
Yeah. How about your observation of playing in Delhi versus Mumbai versus Bangalore versus Chennai?
Strangely enough, second to Bangalore, we played the most in Delhi. And every time we play there, it's always surprising to see how many people there know the music, know the words, how many people show up and really seem to love what we do. We have another experience in any other Indian city. We played quite a bit in Chennai, but Chennai is kind of a weird scene. There's, they don't have too many venues there, and it's always been Calcutta has always been great, but always budgets are a problem. Again, not many venues and so on. So we played there, played some really nice shows there, and along with some really good friends. But Delhi is surprisingly, it's been the second biggest thing for us in this country, apart from Bangalore. The Northeast is also fantastic. We've done a few gigs in Guwahati and Arunachal Pradesh, and the Zero Festival and Dambuk, the Orange Festival, things like that. Those have been great too. But Delhi definitely is a special mention for Thermal and a Quarter Love.
Hey, is there something to speak about A2G Music Store? I read it on your profile and I was like, I can't find any information about this.
Just because it doesn't exist. I mean, it was one of those things where I think it was just after it was after the dot-com boom the bubble had burst, and we all got laid off from those jobs. And before, and I was considering getting into Christ College and teaching back then. But then Rudy, who had joined the band at that point, had this thing about, let's start a music shop, let's open a music store. And we partnered with a friend of ours in Chennai who was supplying us with stuff. And we got a space on MG Road in Barton Center. And we tried running a retail operation, and we sucked. We had no clue how to run a retail operation. I mean, retail is tough, right? Even for seasoned operators, retail is tough. I mean, you really need to know what you're doing. You need to know how to market and sell and to be sustainable. Like I said, we sucked. We were on various levels. So the best thing about the shop, however, was it had 2 big rooms, and the back room was our jam room. So the band basically would meet there every morning at 6 a.m. because we were all kind of working then. And so 6 to 9 a.m. was every morning jam. And doing something like that every day for 2 or 3 hours just makes you pretty good at it, right? It's just one of those things. It happens. And I think it was fantastic times for us. We wrote the whole of the second album and some of the songs from the third album in that time, 2001 to 2003 kind of thing, right? Because we played there every single day. The bad thing about it, of course, was that because the band's jam room was attached to the shop, every time some good gear walked into the shop and the band saw the good gear, it would quietly get squirreled away into the band jam room and was not for sale anymore. So you can see we were pathetic at doing business, right? And so, the whole thing, again, like the dot-com bubble, it burst in a year or so, and we said, this is not for us. We're no good at this. And we quietly crawled back to corporate jobs and so on. But great learning. And, now that we run a business and so on, we know the mistakes we made, and we know not to make them again.
Yeah. So never a wasted opportunity.
Absolutely.
You have produced and composed for various projects. When did you transition into these roles, and how did that whole thing come about for you?
Across the years, people have asked me to play on various things. At one point, I played on a few jingles and things like that. I even got a few offers to move to Mumbai and start doing that. But somehow I didn't want to do that because the band was here, my family was here. I didn't want to leave and so on. So I stuck around here. I kind of sidestepped the whole, working for film kind of thing. I was just too busy doing other things. Not that I have anything against it. It's just that it just didn't happen. Across the last few years, I've found myself working more as a producer. I've been working with an artist from the US. I've been helping her write a few songs, and we put out an album a couple of years ago and a couple of EPs, working on another EP for this year. Across the last year, I've been working with the Azim Premji Foundation and the university, because they have a radio station that they've set up there, online radio. And they'll be producing these very interesting podcasts. Amazing stuff, really. Very geeky, very in-depth, very detailed, and very, in a sense, celebrating the diversity and the and just the the cool stuff about this country. And they asked me to help write music for the episodes and so on. So I've been kind of scoring background music for these podcasts, but also writing pieces of music that will stand on their own. And in fact, we're just in the process of releasing that entire body of work as as music by itself, that will be on all streaming platforms and so on. So I've been doing that for the last year, and that has been very cool, specifically for me, because again, it's completely out of my comfort zone. It's not music that I typically have written before. It finds me working in all kinds of different genres, and working with a lot of local musicians in the classical space as well. So it's been great. Yeah, it's been really great to do that. And yeah, I'm learning, and it's again, I think of myself as wanting to be a lifelong learner, and so I've spent the last few years just kind of teaching myself this whole thing about production, mixing, and all that stuff. A couple of months ago, I put out my second solo album, actually.
I was going to ask, yeah, your solo album.
Offshoot of again learning about these things and doing that.
Okay, sorry. I want to know more about your solo album. Do you plan to tour with it? Do you?
No, not at all. I mean, the first solo album was that thing I did when it was the height of the pandemic and we were all locked up at home, and I was doing pretty bad, doing pretty badly in my head. And my wife is the one who said, "Look, you better do something creative with all this crap in your head, or you're going to drive us all mad." So I just took it upon myself to write a song every day for 30 days, and it kept me out of everyone's hair, and it allowed me to express all the things that were going on in my head at that point. And so, yeah, there were 30 songs that came out of that. Small little songs, really. It was just a kind of like daily, like a diary, like a musical diary almost that came out of that. And so I put that out as an album just offhand, just like that. Across the last year, spending as much time as I was producing and recording and mixing and so on, I had all these kind of half-formed instrumental guitar things that I had been, putting together. And I thought it would be nice to fill those out, make them into full compositions and arrangements, and just put it out to whoever wanted to listen. And so that's what I did. Yeah, I got the album ready, I think, in December. I had a listening session. And then in April, I released it, but not on any streaming. I released it only on my own website. And it was great. So it's only gone out to the people that really wanted to listen to it and purchase it from me. So I've actually made, I think, significantly more money than I've ever made from and the band has made from streaming in several years. So yeah, some new models may be emerging there.
Yeah.
But I plan to put it out on streaming as well at some time. So yeah, it's been fun. It's just been a little pet project. As of now, there's no intention to tour or play live with it or whatever. It's just my geek stuff. That's it.
Do you have a sort of a protocol or like a system you do for so many releases and their marketing and promotion, and then how that leads into a tour? Is there something you've worked out over the years?
I think now that we've started working with the management company a little more seriously, we'll have a little better handle of those things, because otherwise it's usually a bit of a mess, because we kind of do everything ourselves, and we try and stay true to the demands of the modern social media landscape, in terms of you need to have this many shots, this many reels, this many posts, and this many stories, and then you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to pitch this to Spotify, you have to do this on Apple, all these blinking hoops you have to jump through to just release a song, So I don't think we've done that very well in the past. We've done it, and it's gotten whatever it has gotten. But I think we're trying to be a lot more organized about that, working with Siddharth and Oaf Records is the people we're working with right now. And I think we're trying to get a lot more kind of streamlined and organized about that entire process.
So your current fan base, you would say, is still, pre-streaming folks who are really the diehard fans.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's interesting. Like even in Delhi, when we played this time, there's a whole bunch of very young, like college level kids coming to gigs. And much like yourself, starting, the very first thing they say is, "I started listening to you when I was in school," or when you released your first album, I was 1 year old,
Okay, for the record, I did not say that, but I do like the song "Like Me" a lot.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting to see that there are a lot of young people coming to these gigs, and it's nice that they find what we are writing now still relevant. And of course, actually not many pre-streaming folks show up at gigs, because they're at that stage when they don't want to go out to gigs, because going to a bar and standing with 400 sweaty people and hearing loud music is not your idea of a good time when you're at that stage in your life, kind of thing, unless it's like some internationally big famous band that will come only once in 10 years kind of thing. So yeah, so the fan base is quite diverse and varied, and that's good. It feels good.
Yeah. How did Academy come about?
Well, I've been teaching music from 2002. So when I started teaching at Christ College, I started parallel teaching music as well. And so it's been, 22 years of teaching music now. Wow. You think about it. And when we decided to do music full time in 2010, it was one of those things that would help with the sustainability of this entire thing, because it's, as musicians around the world know, gigs are great when they're around, but there can be times like, for example, pandemic, you suddenly run into something and there's no gigs for 3 years. I mean, what do you do? Right. So I think it was a wise move at that point to kind of incorporate that whole teaching aspect of what we did, and so bring the band under that umbrella. So the whole thing is a private limited company, and we run it like that. And across the years, it's grown into a fairly sizable ecosystem for musicians, and it's 14 years now, so it's not an inconsiderable amount of time. And it's nice to see that when you go to a gig in Bangalore with a local band playing on stage, and many times half the band is either current academy faculty, ex-academy faculty, current students, ex-students. Half the crowd also is like, similar. So, and I'm sure many other music schools in the city will be saying the same thing. But it's nice to see that there is an ecosystem around this, and there are still people, even in this AI-dominated universe that we live in right now, who want to, pick up an instrument and go through the sweat and toil of years and years of, repetitive, monotonous things to make a new friend, which is music.
My main curiosity, other than Thermal and a Quarter, was in and around, Bangalore scene, because it's something people in Mumbai and just generally across the cities, we are not too aware of what's going on in the other city, except for the 1 or 2 times when you visit. I mean, that doesn't count, like coming for a Megadeth show or something. You're not going to get a sense of the scene. So, yeah, I just wanted to know a little more from, you who've been so active about it.
I think Bangalore as a scene, Mumbai is great. It's a fantastic place to work and so on. But the survival imperative is so strong that if your artistic creative work isn't delivering, the bare minimum to pay your rent and get you around, you can't. It's like you can't sustain yourself there, right?
True.
In a space like Bangalore, I mean, Bangalore is getting pretty bad as well in those fronts, but which is a little bit kinder, a little bit softer in terms of you can get by on less. Your rents aren't so high and so on. You can afford to take a few more chances. You can afford to be a little more adventurous with the artistic and creative choices you make. And maybe some of that has a role to play in the kind of bands that come out of a certain city or a certain area, because there's just a more conducive environment for them to explore and be adventurous and do things that might not necessarily immediately result in some commercial gain, right? But living in a city where you basically can't hack it if you aren't, if everything that you make isn't, sellable to a certain point, and some people get lucky. You do something and it becomes a great hit, and then boom, you are all over the place and it works. But that doesn't happen for everyone. And so to be able to do that for years and years and years, like we have, I think a space like this helps.
Right. All right. Bruce, thank you so much for taking time out from your busy Saturday and talking to us and sharing such a wealth of information. What's coming up for TAAQ?
We've got a new single coming out on July 1st. It's a brand new song. It's called Raise the Bar. That's being released on July 1st. We're in studio on July 1st to record the next couple of singles. So while one is being released, we are working on the next one. Hoorah! So, and I think we're trying to do Pune or something next, or Chennai next month. So, so gigs are happening, song releases are happening, recording is happening. We're working on album number 9 as well. It's taken a while. It's an unusual album, again, even unusual by our standards, very different kind of soundscape on this one. So we hope to get into studio to record that in the latter half of the year. But this is what is immediately coming up.
Brilliant. Looking forward.
Cheers. Thank you for having me. And this is the Music Mehfil. Am I saying that right? Podcast. And it's available on YouTube and anywhere else, or
All the streaming platforms.
all the streaming platforms. All right. Super.